Next up is Larry Hjalmarson. Did I get it right?
Yes.
He's got this weird J in the middle of his name that always makes me want to stumble. And Larry's the vice president of Williams Gas Pipeline, and they actually operate the Northwest Pipeline here in Utah, although it doesn't come through the Salt Lake Valley. It's a little to the north of here. Let me see if I can find it. And he, as the vice president of Williams, he leads their efforts in pipeline integrity, pipeline safety, environmental and personnel safety, and operations performance. He has 35 years in the industry and has worked for Williams since 1982. He's also on the steering committee, and I think what he's going to talk about today is a lot of the steering committee of Ingas, which is the Interstate Natural Gas Association. I notice we're throwing a lot of alphabet soup at people, and if people don't understand what HCAs and ANPRMs and all that stuff is, track somebody down and ask them during one of the breaks or when we get to question and answers. So Larry's on the steering committee of Ingas Integrity Management Continuous Improvement Effort and is speaking today about that role. Take it away, Larry.
Thank you. Well, I'm very pleased to be here today, and as Carl mentioned, my main role today is to talk about Ingas' plan to build confidence in pipeline safety. I think a plan like that happens in three ways, or the first is with a dialogue. In a meeting like this today, face-to-face, we talk about these important issues of pipeline safety. I think a second area to build confidence is simply our actions. Do our actions back our words? Do we do what we say we're going to do? And then third, I believe most importantly, is will we eliminate failures? I think as we eliminate failures, we will build confidence in pipeline safety. You know, a meeting like this today, and I really appreciate the City of Salt Lake hosting it, as well as the Pipeline Safety Trust. A meeting like this today really starts that first step around that dialogue about pipeline safety. Catastrophic events transform industries. These are the catastrophic events, the major ones that transform the natural gas industry. Very interestingly, this is big news down in Houston, but it's not so much up here in Salt Lake City. But this Sunday marks the 75th anniversary of the most catastrophic event ever in the natural gas industry. 75 years ago this Sunday, gas leaked into the crawl space under the public school in New London, Texas. 500 students and teachers were in the building. It ignited, blew up, and entire classrooms were destroyed with every student in them. 293 students and teachers died that day. That impact is still being felt today. You know, the Houston Chronicle, here's last Sunday's headlines. This gentleman here is 92 years old. He was a fifth grader. He had traded desks with a girl so he could sit near his girlfriend so he could flirt with her during class. The girl he traded desks with died. He didn't die. For 40 years, he bared that grief and that guilt that he felt around that. This accident that happened 75 years ago is still being felt in that community. The next accident down there is in 1965. Pipeline in Louisiana ruptured, 17 people died. This led to the formation of the Office of Pipeline Safety. In 1999 and 2000, Bellingham and Carlsbad accidents occurred. 3 people and 12 people died respectively in those accidents. That led to the integrity management rule that we have today. 2010, the accident at San Bruno happened. At the Pipeline Safety Trust in November, I attended that wonderful forum for discussion. but we heard two very moving presentations. One in the evening, Bruce Baybeck, a board member of the Pipeline Safety Trust, shared how his stepson died at Bellingham. During the day, another presentation was with Renee Morales in San Bruno. She shared how her daughter died at San Bruno. I can tell you those are very painful things to hear in the gas industry, but they're real important for us to hear because that's what it's about ultimately in pipeline safety, is to keep this from happening. So what will happen, what transformative event will happen with, and it's off the sheet, so I'll have to tell it to you, is what we want in Inga companies is that a transformative event as a result of San Bruno is that we apply integrity management principles throughout our entire systems. Right now we're required just to do it in high consequence areas. We believe applying these principles everywhere will show these benefits and will eventually drive us towards zero failures, because of all these graphs that you saw, what's the only acceptable number? And it's zero. Those aren't the only accidents in the industry. Every one of our company has our own accidents that demonstrate why this is so important. Here are two accidents that Williams has experienced. The accident in 2008 at Appomattox, Virginia, the families closest to this rupture. And I can tell you, as good as the videos are, the videos don't show it completely. To show it right, you'd have to have this building shaking. People think it's an earthquake when a pipeline ruptures. You'd have to have the intense heat. The heat is extremely intense. The noise is overwhelming. People think it's a jet aircraft engine. It's a deafening roar. And these families closest to our pipeline narrowly escaped with their lives. And 5 people were injured, 3 with serious burn injuries at Appomattox, Virginia. Just a few months ago at Sweetwater, Alabama, we had another failure. There were 3 hunters in the area. We were very concerned about them. For the first hour or so, we didn't know where they were. Fortunately, they were accounted for and they came out safe. We work our careers in the industry to prevent these from happening. When they happen, they're devastating to us. But they also underscore why these efforts are so important, why integrity management is so important. We have to prevent these failures. We have to protect people that live next to our pipeline. The good news is we think that's possible. As Inga companies gathered in the aftermath of San Bruno, and with this intense effort to really improve and get better at this, the first thing we did was we laid down some guiding principles. The first guiding principle up there says simply, our goal is zero failures. That's a pretty important goal to put down in writing and to commit to. Real good one to ask ourselves, do we really believe it? Is it just words? Do we just sort of want it to happen? Or do we intend for it to happen? Are we really committed to make it happen? You know, when you see the accidents that are still happening, there's a tendency to not believe it. But I can tell you that with integrity management rule or principles that we're applying, I believe it is possible. I'm going to jump down to the 4th one. It says we are committed to applying integrity management principles across our entire systems. That's what Inga is committing to. And those rules that were put in place about 8 years ago, initially, I am sorry to admit that the industry somewhat resisted them. It seemed like too daunting a task. But some interesting things happened over those 8 years. We started seeing the results. We started seeing the improvements. Those graphs that you saw with the numbers dropping came largely due to this rule. Another thing that happened during those 8 years was we began to realize those rules weren't all perfect. There was improvements that we could make to each of those individual rules, and we're realizing that. And that gets me to the 3rd one that says we will be relentless in the pursuit of improving these rules. We know they're not perfect, but we're going to get really good at it. The second one up there talks about safety culture. Now, safety culture is a lot more than your rules. It's about your beliefs and commitments, okay? you can tell that it's a lot more than that. And so we realize that the cultures of our individual companies and the culture of our industry as a whole is really important in this equation. The fifth one up there that you can't read says that we will engage our stakeholders. We know we can't do this on our own. It's a dialogue that we have with you. What are the things you need in the public around this? What are your responsibilities around this? I think that this dialogue is important that we're doing today. This next slide outlines the 9 things that we're doing and committing to in Inga to get better at this. There's actually a lot more than this, but these are the 9 major ones. I won't cover them in detail for lack of time. Right down there on the edge of the stage, I put a stack of copies of a 1-page summary. Very fine print. We had to squeeze it in there, but we have a 1-page summary of each of these items. The first one says, we're applying risk management beyond high consequence areas. I've already stated that a few times. And I highlight that one in yellow because we want to point out that we think the right way to do that is stage that based on population. Go after the populated areas first, get those complete, and then move on to the unpopulated areas. The second one up there says that we're going to raise the standard for corrosion anomaly management. Sort of a mouthful. You can read the details of that with this 1-pager. Third one there says we want to demonstrate fitness for service on pre-regulation pipe. You heard this mentioned in some of the videos. We have the same concern that the National Transportation Safety Board has about the vintage pipe, the pipe that, say, was in place before 1970. We've got to have that pipe safe. Now, one thing they said was that we ought to hydrotest all of that pipe. Now, that represents 60% of the pipe in the United States. We think in Inga, a more practical approach, and just as effective, is to review all the records, establish, has there been a hydrotest? How confident are we in the information regarding that pipe? And then hydrotest those pipes that we really need to. But we agree with the spirit of it. We got to make sure that that pipeline is safe. This fourth one is highlighted in yellow because it's somewhat controversial. Shorten the pipeline isolation and response time to 1 hour. And following San Bruno, they didn't get those valves closed for 90 minutes. Those fires raged on and on. Houses began catching other houses on fire. The fire department couldn't get in there to put out those fires. It was outrage from the public, and rightly so, because those pipelines, they weren't shut down. But more commonly, we are able to get the pipe shut in quickly. We had a number of workshops with emergency responders last year. And in those, we talked about this topic. And what they told us is what's more important is careful coordination and planning and communication, and that we promptly get the valves shut. In a natural gas pipeline rupture, even if you shut them instantly, the public's still in grave danger. There's so much gas trapped between those valves that the public is still in danger. We can't shut the valves fast enough to prevent that. The very best thing we can do in pipeline safety is to prevent the accident from happening to begin with. The fourth one there says improve integrity management, communication, and data. We want to implement the Pipeline and Informed Planning Alliance guidance around the country. Great document, tells how a community can have development around pipelines, but in a safe manner that makes sense. We want to evaluate, refine, improve threat assessment and mitigation. We want to foster a culture of continuous improvement throughout our industry. And we want to provide forums for stakeholder engagement, much like we're participating in today, as well as with our emergency officials. These are the Integrity Management Continuous Improvement Action Teams. This is what Carl mentioned. I'm part of the steering committee. I'm leading up Team 7 as well, Emergency Preparedness. You can't see the number 9 team on storage. We have more than 200 people from our various companies staffing these committees, many hundreds more behind the scenes working to support the efforts of these committees. And it's these committees where the action is happening to improve safety in our industry. We are collaborating like we never have before. We are talking to each other, company to company. We are helping each other get better at this effort. So, what's needed? Simply a holistic approach to pipeline safety. We've got to address the NTSB concerns. We have the same concerns. We want to set a path with priorities and actions to eventually achieve the goal of zero failure. The Pipeline Safety Act has been reauthorized. PHMSA has put out an announcement of proposed rulemaking. We are responding to that. We are trying to help PHMSA as they design new rules around that the rules make sense, that they really are practical, that they really are effective, that money is spent and really has a good result, and that we continue to be able to deliver this vital fuel to our communities and our cities. We want stronger state and federal excavation damage prevention measures. The industry needs to do more research and development. We need to share lessons learned. We need to infuse these best practices. We need to invest in the next generation of employees and tools. We need to make safety culture an integral part of our industry day in and day out. Effective pipeline safety is a shared responsibility, and all of us in the room share that responsibility on making this better. So in summary, we're going to have relentless improvement toward that goal of zero failure. Risk management is our central strategy, and our success depends on the engagement with all of our stakeholders, all of you present in the room. We are listening to the public, we are working with stakeholders, and we are making our pipelines continuously more safer.